let's broaden out the discussion. And joining me now from Sana'a is pro-Houthi journalist Hussain Albukhaiti. From Riyadh, we have Saudi and Gulf Affairs expert Mohamed al Qubaiban. And in the Swedish city of Gothenburg is Afrah Nasser. She's a journalist and non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. Thanks all so much for joining us. Okay, Hussain, I'd like to begin with you in Yemen. Earlier, you were citing almost immediate violations of the ceasefire, but we're hearing now Hudaida is largely peaceful. Do you feel that is a precarious peace, or will this hold?
I think the ceasefire now is still holding, despite the fact that the Saudi fighter jet and drones is still over the sky of Hudaida. But we have hope that this ceasefire will continue, because I believe one of the main reasons for this ceasefire to be held from Saudi Arabia is because the pressure on Saudi Arabia and on the Crown Prince, especially after the brutal killing of Jamal Khashoggi, and we have seen the Senate has a resolution like to stop all military support to Saudi Arabia, and maybe the Congress can take the next step. And I believe if this pressure will keep on Saudi Arabia, then we will see that the ceasefire will hold, and it will help Yemenis to implement it in other areas across Yemen.
Okay. Afrah, do you feel that sense of optimism is justified given the U.S. actions that are starting to take hold against Saudi Arabia? We can't say they actually are. This is a congressional move, but nothing has actually been done. But should he be so encouraged?
It's so delightful to hear Albukhaiti speaking that he's hopeful, especially that he's in Sana'a and he's very close to the Houthi circle. I believe that there is a collective willingness to make this ceasefire last for as long as possible. Beside the reasoning that Albukhaiti provided, that there is a global international pressure on Saudi Arabia, following especially the killing of the Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi. I believe the Saudi-led coalition believe that one of its best PR work today or available is to find an end to the war in Yemen. But at the same time, the Hudaida battle represents a driving force for why the peace talk and this ceasefire is likely to succeed, because we do understand, and the international community understand, how the importance of the Hudaida port being damaged or stopped, or if anything happens to this port, will lead to a catastrophe. So there is a willingness from the international community to prevent a looming famine that the world has never seen in generations unfolding in Yemen.
Okay. Mohamed, is Saudi feeling the international pressure?
Good evening to you again and your guest. There is truly there is no kind of pressure regarding whatever Hussein talked about or the other panel talked about. The pressure is we are feeling sorry for the humanitarian case. That's what is the real pressure. That's what I think the pressure is as a number one. And then the other thing is, let's give the peace a chance to see how those rebels will act based on. The third thing, I don't think so that as the other panel saying, the pressure regarding the Khashoggi case or the Congress announcement. No, I think so that the international community took it as a serious, and with the let's say the movement in the ground forward, almost I could say about 5 to 7 kilometers from the port. I think that what drives Houthis and to come and sit back in Stockholm. Those are what we should, I mean, this is what I think is the main thing. But the bottom line, let's move forward and see what will happen. Last night, being announced the termination of shooting, and we will see what will coming next. General Patrick should be coming soon. We will see who gonna stick to the agreement back in Stockholm. So to my point, let's forget about the past and move forward for the disaster case back in Yemen.
Great. Then, Mohamed, let me ask you quickly. I understand it is a complex question, but I'm just going to ask you to, if you can, outline the ideal resolution for this conflict from the Saudi perspective.
First of all, ma'am, this is, I could say it's a Yemeni conflict. But the bottom line that we have to understand, the Yemenis should solve their problems by themselves. The big deal or the big issues for the Saudis is will terminate the intervene from Iran toward Yemen and try to exploit their ethics or their sects against the area. So what we are really looking for, Hussein, please, Hussein, the difficulty I can hear, Andrea, so let's not cut, please. Please, Hussein. And so the Saudis are looking for settlement. We are really looking for settlement. Houthis is a part of Yemen. We just cannot isolate them. They're almost 5%. They're Muslims too. But basically, we saw that the intervention of Iran in the other capitals, Baghdad and Damascus and Beirut, it has become a real critical. So that's why the Saudis and their coalitions end up helping the Yemenis, and also it's by request by Mr. Hadi. So the coalition never intervene until they're being requested. So I'm coming up. Bottom lines, we need the Yemenis to sit in the table and to throw the Iranian think. We will push for the peace and get together as a neighbor country.
Okay, Hussein, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, when he called it is a Yemeni conflict, if it was a Yemeni conflict, why they call it the Saudi-led coalition war on Yemen? And if it was not a Saudi conflict, if the Saudi has not to do with it, why we have many time talks in Geneva, twice in Kuwait, twice, and only this one that we for the first time have a real ceasefire. This is because of the pressure from the United States on Saudi Arabia, and especially on the Crown Prince. And when they keep actually talking about Iran, of course, maybe Iran has intervened in Iraq because they have border with Iraq. They have maybe a good relation with Syria and with Bashar al-Assad. But in Yemen, you have a total blockade in Yemen. There is no Iranian fighter jet attacking the so-called Hadi forces. It's all under the attack of the Saudi-led coalition war. And to be honest, I mean, it's really strange that you come to fight Iran while Iran is just in front of you in the Persian Gulf. United Arab Emirates is one of the main parts of this so-called Saudi-led coalition war on Yemen. They claim that Iran is occupying 3 islands. Is it better for them to go and liberate their island than coming to Yemen to fight Iran on suspicion that the Iran present in Yemen? And to be honest, just 3.5 years of blockade in Yemen. I mean, it's hard to get food and medicine into Yemen. And all airport and port are controlled by the Saudi-led coalition. All land crossing is controlled as well by them. How can Iran smuggle this type of weapons? It's just they try to make Iran in this war in Yemen. They want to make it a conflict between Sunni, Shi'i, between Saudi Arabia and Iran. And this is all false and all wrong.
Okay, let me get Afrah back into the debate here. I mean, Afrah, Mohamed says it is a Yemeni conflict, but we know the regional players, Saudi and Iran in particular, loom very large over this conflict, and no one can really deny that they are fighting a proxy war on Yemeni territory. Will they eventually have to come to the table, those regional players, to work out this agreement, or can it be completely solved by Yemeni parties?
You know, there is an outsider reading to the situation in Yemen, and there is also a local reading. For almost all Yemenis understand that in mid-2014, Houthi group takeover of Sana'a and the attempted coup against President Hadi back then represented waging a war against Hadi. And then in March 2015, Saudi Arabia waged a war against all Yemenis. So you have many layers of this conflict. But now it's not time to, point fingers and blame who started the war. Now we have a pivotal moment where especially Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates are forced to believe in diplomacy. And to make diplomacy first is very, very important. And for them to understand that they cannot end this conflict military means alone cannot end the conflict. They have to talk and discuss and have these talks, especially that the warring parties promised to meet again in end of January. We have to focus on that. We have to focus in bringing the Saudis and the Emiratis and Yemeni government and the Houthis to come up with a new political road that could save millions of Yemenis from the famine, and also find some stability for Saudi Arabia before Yemenis. We don't want to see any of these rockets flying from Yemen to Saudi, or the daily bombardment of Saudi-led coalition that did not leave anything moving inside Yemen. Schools, hospitals, funerals, and the list goes on. So we have to take this pivotal moment where our neighbors are starting to realize and appreciate talking instead of bombing.
Okay. Mohamed, I'd like to get your thoughts on what you've heard. And I mean, can you really insist that this is just a Yemeni conflict?
Let me just answer back, Hussein. Hussein is trying to throw a point where I think, with my respect to Hussein, it's a shallow thinking. I'm sorry to say this, but this is the reality. Now, if we're not trying to, or we're trying to avoid or trying to ignore what the Iranians are doing, so Hussein, please get back and read your books very carefully. Regarding the other panel talking about not to use the bombing and not to use the force to remove the Houthis, well, we saw what the Houthis were trying to do. First, they fired the long weapons toward the Saudis. They threatened the Saudis' border. They threatened the Holy Kaaba. Guess what? 1.5 billion people are coming towards Saudi to perform Hajj and Umrah, and they are being threatened by the Houthis. So what do you expect? The Saudis will sit down and watch? No, I don't think so. Getting back again to your point, Andrea, yes, I still consider this is a conflict that the Houthis trying to take over the power and be as the arms for the Iranians, and the Saudis or the Emirates or the coalition never intervene unless the Houthis almost going to kill Mr. Hadi's. And again, I don't want to repeat what's been repeating last 3 years, but the 2216, I think it's clear the point that the Saudis or the coalition has the right to go and intervene and help the Yemenis get back Mr. Hadi in power. As simple as this. Why we're making it difficult?
Afra, very quickly, I saw you had something to intervene with. Do go ahead quickly if you can.
I just mentioned the bombing of and the violation committed by Houthis, not only towards Saudi Arabia and Saudi borders, but even inside Yemen. All warring parties have committed horrific war crimes in the course of this conflict. Now I think it's a waste of time to repeat and blaming each other. Now what is important is to understand that the only way to end this conflict is through political means. Military operations alone cannot do that.
Okay, I want to ask Hussain, since you are optimistic, given the deal in Hudaida, tell us what common ground the parties in this conflict have to work off of. And I'm talking the Saudis, the Emiratis, the forces on the ground in Yemen, as well as the Houthis and Iran.
I think we cannot take Iran into any future negotiation because, I mean, we see that Iran maybe it does in the media support Ansarullah the Houthi, but it has no military existent in Yemen. And the main, I think that we can solve or stop this war on Yemen is, first of all, the Yemeni party has to meet each other. This is what they have done in what they did in Sweden, and then the Houthis have to sit down with Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates. The main obstacle for not stopping this war is just the Saudi and United Arab Emirates keep denying that they are part of this war. And we've seen the claim that Hadi has requested the Saudi coalition. This is as well a big lie, because Hadi has come in Abu Dhabi TV, I believe 3 years ago, and he said clearly in the interview that I didn't know about the war only when I was in Al-Mahra, which is near Oman border, when he fled from Aden. And then he said, we heard about it in the news. I didn't know that they will interfere. I asked them before, is there going to be any intervention? They said no. So, I mean, we have to get our fact right, especially the guest in Riyadh. When he keeps saying a coup is a coup, I mean, Sisi is a coup, and now is in coalition with Saudi and United Arab Emirates to fight a coup in Yemen. I mean, it doesn't matter what the Houthi did in 2014. Is it a revolution or a coup? In Yemen, we have many problems for the last 40 years. Most of Yemeni president, either in north or south, has been downfalled like by assassination or by a coup. But we have never ever had this so horrific situation. The largest cholera outbreak in Yemen. One child died every 10 minutes. This is because there was an outside intervention, a blockade that have killed 250,000 Yemeni and 16,000 killed by the Saudi-led coalition direct airstrike. It's still, I mean, upsetting me when some people still try to put the blame on other country. The Sweden agreement was good, but it actually there is one bad like thing about it is they have linked the humanitarian situation and the flow with humanitarian aid with military and security situation in Hudaida. They should actually has left it the humanitarian alone to focus on it to save millions of Yemeni first, because it is a crime what's done to Yemenis.
Okay, Mohammed, quick final words.
Yeah, final word is, Andrea, now you've heard to Mr. Hussain what he was saying. Exactly, this is what I'm saying. This is their mindset. That's the way how they think. They're just only thinking shallow. They're only trying to blame what's happening in Yemen. That's from the coalition. Hussain, please, let's stop this ugly music.
Here in Yemen, we are allowed to think and to say what we want, not like in Saudi Arabia.
This is exactly because if you and your mindset and your leaders, if you get back and watch what King Salman Center for Humanitarian Aid, what they did to Yemen, I think that's one answer. But trying to and get back to the history, we knew what you were doing in Yemen.
I know what they did to Khashoggi, and they denied it before. How can you believe them now?
For the sixth. Hussain, will you keep quiet, please? I never interrupt. Wallahi, I have a difficulty to hear Andrea. How about yourself? Then let's not talk about past. Be pessimistic. Let's think forward and listen to her point. Her point, Andrea, was talking about the common work. Let's move forward. Let's terminate fire, cease fire, wait for the other delegations common ground, and move forward. Yemen are starving. Yemen people are suffering. And you guys are sitting behind the shields and firing weapons to the civilians. I didn't think so. We can cooperate with such a mind
the Saudi-led
like
coalition
this.
war and blockade.
Okay, I'm going to have to leave it there, gentlemen. I apologize, but unfortunately the clock is against us as always. I'd like to thank all three of our panelists so much for joining us on the Newsmakers.